Hello and welcome to the Advanced Age Role-Playing Gamers Podcast, next episode of Between Two GMs. I'm Matt, your co-host, and I'm here today with my co-host Nathan.
Hey, nice to be here. So I guess I'll go ahead and get started. So we're interviewing Christian. If you could say your last name for me, that would be super awesome.
Sahlén.
Sahlén.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure I butchered that. So, and Johan, we've had you on before. Glad to have you back.
Yeah, and nice to be here again.
We had such a great time talking about MÖRK BORG last time, and I'm a cyborg backer, so I'm going to ask the very important question that all cyborg backers in the U.S. named Nathan really want to know is, when am I getting my damn book?
What the fuck's my book?
What the fuck's my book? I've seen all over Twitter, people are getting it and starting getting it in Europe now, so that's really awesome. It's nice to see it in people's hands, and people are excited. So
Europe, Australia.
Be honest, you don't. Yeah. You don't mean that. It's not nice to see. You want your own book.
I want my own damn book.
I think last we heard, was that like last week? I think it was I think the asset packs were on a train outside of Indianapolis by then, heading to the fulfillment center. So it's in the country at least. So, you know.
But we also heard
any day now, famous quote.
Yeah, stuck on a train somewhere around Indianapolis.
I'm not sure what stuck means in this situation, but it's there.
It's not there have been some labor disputes going on, so I'm sure that didn't help. As you know,
no, but it's at least very nice. Feels good to have it all on one continent now.
Yeah.
So I think I'm getting a theme now. Is that every time we do these interviews, this is Nathan's like first question. We're just going to change this from Between Two GMs to where's my book. That's the whole motivation behind these interviews. I'm catching on now.
I'm a selfish bastard.
He's like a habitual Kickstarter.
Speaking of, I actually backed the Astrolich's supplement, cyborg supplement, the driving rules and all. So I'm wondering if I might actually get that before I get your book.
I see people getting that too now. So that's I should be getting mine soon as well. Hopefully, we'll see.
So enough about me.
Soon,
TM.
So I know what you guys do, but Christian, if you could talk about your role, and Johan talk about your role in bringing this product to life, I'd appreciate that. So start with Christian.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the writer and I guess game designer of Cyborg. Of course, the core rules is MÖRK BORG, so Pelle did that, but I adapted it and rewrote it and so on. And I guess I'm the guy who went to Johan and said, you know what, I think we need to turn this into an actual thing. Since I first started writing it for me and my group and the other Stockholm Kartell members to play, but it turned out well enough. So I said, like, hey Johan, get on board with this and let's start doing this. Because without you, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that was pretty much what happened. And my role is just like in MÖRK BORG to draw and design, graphic design this thing. I've done some minor edits as well, but mainly it's been the visual thing.
Yeah, visually it's quite stunning. Different from MÖRK BORG. You definitely recognize your hand in it, but it's quite stunning to look through. At least the PDF. I'm sure, you know, just like the MÖRK BORG book experience is different from the PDF. Can't wait. Does the spine glow in the dark?
It does actually. Yeah, I haven't tested it. I had to think for a second because there were so many different things we wanted to do and we bounced back and forth. But yeah, it should glow in the dark.
Right.
I haven't really tested it yet.
Yeah, I'll try it out.
But yeah, it's a chunky book as well. I'm holding it now. It's like twice the page count from MÖRK BORG. So, but I guess we'll get there soon enough here in the discussion. But
yeah, so one of the things I was really wondering is so I actually read this kind of interesting thread on Twitter last night, and I should know better than to to do that. But Christian? What was your idea behind kind of going after the whole cyberpunk genre with a Mörk Borg spinoff?
I mean, it basically started with me wanting to run a cyberpunk game in the year of 2020 because of Cyberpunk 2020, which was my first the cyberpunk game. And I, since then, have changed my wants and needs from a rule system and couldn't really find a cyberpunk game with a rules light system that I liked and enjoyed and had the tone and feel that I like and enjoyed. So and back then Mörk Borg wasn't released, but I was playtesting it and helping out with some other things for it, and just felt that this could be a good fit. So I started redoing it or adding cyberpunk stuff to it and thinking about how it could work. And then also at the same time developed, I guess, what I wanted from the setting and the world. And one thing we all kind of agreed on when we first started out and started discussing this, what we wanted the punk to emphasize the punk in cyberpunk and not just go for a cyber style, but go for the punk feel and attitude and revolutionary or revolting, I guess, feel for it.
Okay, so yeah, I think the punk part shines through, and it's interesting that you started with Cyberpunk 2020. So Matt and I back in college played the original Cyberpunk with a bunch of our friends, and so that was late 80s, or early 90s, and Cyberpunk back then is a thing, and it really hasn't really shifted forward a whole lot. We're kind of still stuck with what I wouldn't say stuck, but we're still thinking about what we thought the future would be back in the 80s and 90s. So there's definitely some of that aesthetic where it's more of a, you're taking a cable and plugging it into something to connect instead of, today we have Wi-Fi and we all carry computers around in our pocket. But so it seems like you kind of kept with that kind of image of cyberpunk and modified it a bit. What's your take?
A bit, absolutely a bit. I mean, I think that most cyberpunk things today own something to Cyberpunk 2020 and or Cyberpunk from Art Historian, and of course we also all go. Everyone who do cyberpunk today go to the same well to fetch water. We all go to Neuromancer. We all glance at Matrix. We have all seen Altered Carbon recently and so on. So I mean, it's not that much cyberpunk movies and shows to go to, and also all of those are also going to the same sources, Blade Runner and the Neuromancer and everything like that. So it's gonna be similar in some cases. And I mean, for the we wanted some like physical things. We didn't want everything to be virtual and digital. We wanted like physical hardware things to be meaningful. So when we did the apps, we described that they are on like cartridges, and I see like GBA or Game Boy cassettes or cartridge when I write that and when I think about it. But if you see something different and think about them as micro SD cards or whatever, just go with that. That doesn't matter. Those details don't matter. Whatever is cool to you, go with that thing. And there has to be some kind of cables and something for the people who want that, and we don't make the cables important. we just say that you need to jack into your cyber deck, and if that is pushing a button in on the back of your head or putting in a cable or whatever, that's completely up to you, because those details don't matter as much, and both can exist in the same world and at the same time. So when we did the RCDs, which is our cell phone replacement with its retinal communication device, so it's glasses or VR headsets. It may be like mirror shades or cyber eyes or a gigantic rig that you wear on your head. And one person can have that gigantic rig and the other person can have cyber eyes, and it doesn't matter. They do the same thing. You get the same benefits or same possibilities from it. Just pick whatever you decide is the coolest thing for you and for your character and for your game to wear, because exactly how things look, that's going to vary. It's going to be fashion in those kind of things as well. And maybe you really like the fashion of 5 years ago, or you can't afford to upgrade. So that's why you have a gigantic rig instead of the latest ACGS, TG Labs, Cyber Eyes kind of things.
Yeah, I find that interesting when you look at other cyberpunk style games. You see a lot of I'd call it gear porn. Yep. Where there's just tons and tons of gear, and there's really very, very minute differences from one to the other. And it's and I think that's part of the thing that's kind of limiting to the accessibility of the game. Is like, okay, if I have to spend like 2 hours coming through and trying to determine, okay, which one is going to give me the in my budget and within, it's not going to reduce my humanity or whatever too much, and also give me the maximum point spread. That's a lot of work if you just want to play a game. Yeah.
I think also like the more options that you have, I think the less free you are, because at least that's how I see it when I play. If I have a lot of things on the list to pick from, like I feel like there's not enough room for me to like invent my own stuff, or there's not enough room for everyone at the table to come up with things. So like this way, which I think you'll find in like MÖRK BORG as well, it's much more suggestions and just more like vibes in a way, so that you can come up with your own things. Just like Christian said, like we just mentioned, the RCD is something with which you can interact with the net, but it doesn't say exactly how it works or exactly what it is. That's up to you to decide. So yeah, we tried very deliberately to avoid the whole like gear porn thing that you're describing. Like there are of course like lists of inspiration and stuff, because that's fun, but it's not like these tables and tables and tables of different weapon parts or whatever. So but you can add that too if you want, like with the third-party license. So it's very easy to hack. I was
looking at itch earlier today, and there's already a bunch of people that are putting out Cyborg compatible. And I just I kind of was thinking about it when you're talking about the cartridges. So when I read the apps section in the book, I was thinking like Nintendo Super NES when I was reading that, and I'm just picturing something goes wrong and I have to take the cartridge out and blow in it.
Totally. But I think that works as well, because like these things are super like custom built, highly legal, and so it makes sense for them to be something very analog, which you can't track, or it's not traceable on the net. So it kind of works, I think.
And you want to trade them like physical things. It's because the apps are supposed to be like, yes, illegal and custom made, and they're not available for sale. You can't just go to a store and buy the latest kill every security guard in the closest within 20 meters app off the shelf. You need to find someone who has it, and maybe you can copy it, but then you probably need the same kind of cartridge or some custom built thing to be able to find it. Because if you could just file share these on Kazaa or whatever, then everyone would have all of the apps at all times, and that makes for less fun of a game. These have to be like powerful things, because you can make powerful actions with them, pretty much. So
they're like magic items in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Or spell scrolls.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's a lot of things in this game that are like that. Like it has an equivalent in a standard like fantasy game world. So we have the apps and we have the nanopowers and the cybertech, and they all kind of, you can sort of mirror them in fantasy games, which makes it easier, I think, to like come up with your own things if you're not that familiar with like playing sci-fi or cyberpunk games. So if you think of like like apps as a spell scroll, or cybertech as a magic item that you just happen to have, attached to your body. Like, I think for me, that makes it easier to just come up with something and also balance it or not balance it.
I think Nathan and I were talking a little earlier before, having read through the book, some of the similarities. They reminded me, what was it, Omens or Talismans? Because I've played similar games like The Strange, and I've been listening to a Numenera game. And so, I could definitely see where these were more like fantasy or contemporary, but those same concepts, especially with the apps, right, seem like this thing you've got. It's like an emergency thing, right? You can. So, no, I thought that was really cool. Definitely tone-wise, you guys, a lot of the cyberpunk games, right? It's dystopian future, dark future. This is like that, 11. I just want to read, if you guys don't mind, like one line from the book that, like, when I was reading it, really stuck in my head was, everyone is a liar and a cheat, and everyone wants more creds. And I thought, okay, this like sets the tone right up front. And I think there's somewhere else in the book, and I don't know how much but basically like the golden rule, right? Like you can work, but they're always the bad guys, right? And so it really set like you guys really definitely went in for that. Again, after just reading through all the MÖRK BORG stuff, going over into Cyborg, I'm like, okay, yeah.
From metal to punk. So this is, it lines up.
And I think that part about everyone wanting creds is kind of like that's a very important like setting and also like system building thing, because money is a very, very important thing. Like it runs the world. This is a super capitalist system and world, and we even put like on the character sheet next to your health is how much money you have, because those two are like intertwined, because you need money to survive in this world, and you owe a lot of money to some powerful people who want it back, and that's your main like drive for adventure to do something. And also, should you like die, there's a chance that if you have enough money, you can actually be saved by like an emergency response team. So it's very like it's attached to your life and your well-being in a way. So. And you have to like balance that as well, because you want the money to be able to pay back your debt, but also you need it to survive, and you need it to buy the stuff you need to finish the missions. And so keeping track of that is very central to the game.
I did like that characters start out in debt. That it's an immediate baked in motivator that, someone's going to come and, pay you a visit. If you don't, so that's because otherwise it's like, oh, why am I putting my life at risk to go out and do these crazy jobs? Well, it's because, I got a gambling debt, or I got a bill I got to pay. And I thought that was really good to bake that in right at the character creation.
Yep.
Yeah. Then you have a bunch of NPCs as well. As a GM, you can like come up with these people and have them, knock on your door from time to time or send you a text. Like I had when I had one of the characters who was like, they had been part of a cult, and they owe a lot of money owed a lot of money to this cult, and so whenever they would like finish a mission and get a bunch of rewards, the cult would somehow know this because they had like tracked their bank account, so they saw how much money they had.
Yeah.
And so they would just send them a text like, "Oh, I see that you have a bunch of funds on your account here. We really appreciate your generous offer, and remind you what happens if you don't contribute." So they're like, "Okay, sure, I have to pay you back, because otherwise you'll do something nasty." But yeah, that's like you always have this threat of people wanting your shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see you brought cults back into this game again. It's a nice common thread. So what are some other common threads you think that people would recognize, players of Mörk Borg would recognize in Cyborg?
Yeah, there are some places and names that are similar. There's not a lot of them that are like pure Mörk Borg callbacks. There's a couple of hidden ones, but some other ones are both like Alliansen Inc. is of course a nod back to Alliance in the nation or state or whatever you call it. But it's also the previous right-wing coalition of different parties in Sweden used to be called Alliansen.
Really? Okay.
So I just put incorporated after that and decided that these are the business people. That coalition doesn't exist anymore. But then there's things like that in there. And Galgbacken is of course Galgenbeck, but it's also placed in an area where the inspirational city for Psy actually had its old gallows.
Okay, yeah.
So it's there for a reason, and other than just being a Mörk Borg reference, pretty much.
But I think you'll recognize some of the, like obviously the system, but also like the miseries are back in a way, but in a very different flavor. So, which is more fitting for the genre, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna, if you didn't, so I thought that was amazing. So I love the idea that, every day you turn on the television and there's something awful. And I was wondering, so as how do you see, beyond just having it on Newsline, so when you guys have play tested or whatever, how have you worked in, or if you could explain that mechanic and like how you've worked it in play testing into your games?
When I ran the playtest campaign and the gang just finished the heist that we turned into the Eizo Villa heist that we released as a pamphlet in a limited variety or amount, will probably be available later for a more public or general public. But they finished that after midnight, so I did pretty much a mystery roll in the middle of the heist, and I think it was like the Cyborgs wins headline that popped up, and pretty much when they sped through and ran away from there, they kept running into like roads being blocked off of people doing celebratory riots because someone won a game that was important, and the fans were out celebrating and breaking things pretty much. So they had to like get through that, and also pretty much decided that some blocks were pretty much unavailable for them, or they kept away from them because there were riots there. So that had didn't have a nasty effect on their life, but it did impact how they did things from going on. And so there were things like that. And someone they knew popped up. I'm not going to spoil the headline, but someone they had worked with previously popped up in the news suddenly, and they started to wonder or reframe that entire mission because they no longer knew, like, okay, is this true? Did we work for this asshole? And if so, did we help this thing in any way, or was this something completely unrelated? And of course, when I design the mission and everything. I had no idea that this was going to happen, but when I rolled that person seemed like a good fit to be involved in something like this, something nasty. So now, who knows? Who knows if they were part of it or it was just a bad coincidence? But yeah.
But they were all written so that they're just deliberately like you should have them affect the party specifically in a lot of times, just so you can get that sort of adventure seeds from it, or like flip everything on its head, basically.
Well, that's yeah. I really like this idea. I know it said like I don't know if you have to roll it at certain times, but the idea that the world is happening around you, right? Yeah. It's not just your mission, right? That I think I like that idea. I think we played one game, they called it the tilt. It's like the middle of the game, you throw in this like zinger. And this idea of rolling these headlines, I thought this was a great idea. Like your guys are doing a mission and you're right. If it's riots, like you're like, oh, well, we're just going to go across town. Are you? No, not if there's riots. So I like that feel that the world is happening, right? Regardless of your, your three-dimensional, all-powerful players, right? There's greater things going on. So, yeah, that's a pretty cool mechanic.
And it's also like, just like the miseries in MÖRK BORG, the 7th time this happens, something really terrible happens. And that's like the end game in a way. But yeah, these are all like you roll every midnight to see whether or not some of these miserable headlines occurs. So it's just like in MÖRK BORG, you decide what die to use, and that will determine how long your campaign lasts.
I'm talking about the setting and bringing the miseries in, but I like some of the other feel of the setting, like the idea that everything is kind of in AR and VR and meat space all at the same time. They all kind of mesh together. I feel like it would help bring in some kind of alternative missions and even characters. Like if you wanted to play, an AI of some type, they can go on a mission with you. It's doesn't really affect the game at all because they could be there right next to you. So I like that aspect a lot.
They can be like projected so that everyone sees them in their vision, but they're not really there. And that's also like, because everything is so digital, always I feel when you're playing it or running it, you can you have so much more information, so that it helps when the characters are like solving problems or like approaching things, that they can continue, they can like communicate with each other instantaneously, regardless of where they are. I feel that that's a big change from like running MÖRK BORG, so that they always have like a video feed of what the others are seeing, and they can always like text each other, so that you never run into the problem where like two of the players are in one room and the others are outside, and they're like, oh, I didn't know this because I didn't see this happening. So you always know exactly what everyone is seeing, if you want to interpret the RCDs working that way. But I kind of like that. It makes it way more like transparent and open in a way, so everyone's involved.
It kind of breaks down kind of the metagaming aspect too, because you don't have to try to pretend like you don't know, because you're there too. You know what's going on, so you don't have to that crutch.
Yeah, and it's like, what do I know about this thing? Well, just search for it right now, and you'll find something. Like you find a video or a meme or a news story or whatever about this person or place. Or so yeah, it's very like the information and access. It's a big thing.
So in keeping with the kind of the setting idea, this whole like ground zero or G0 idea, where did that come from, and why is that kind of important part of the setting?
Where did that come from? I think
stumped you.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember why I felt that I really, really needed like a catastrophe zone in the middle of the city.
Some sort of Akira thing, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was partly Akira. I think the wall was really important as well. I wanted like a big ass wall in the middle of the city that you should absolutely not pass. And of course you should, because G0 is cool and scary and fantastic.
That's where the good stuff is.
Yeah.
All the good loot's on the other side of the wall.
Exactly. So we wanted like the post-apocalyptic place, and of course outside of the city there's all kinds of post-apocalyptic possibilities as well. But this is like the quagmire, the concentrated, limited area of absolute horror and monsters as well. And probably the source of the nano infections and so on. So if you want to throw in demons and portals to hell into your Psy game, you put them in G0 and that's fine, because no one, I mean, we say that this is where the bombs drop and when the rocks fell and so on, and it's like, yeah, sure, it may be whatever. It can be a portal to hell if you want to go that way. It may be put a portal into other dimensions, put a portal into the MÖRK BORG world in there, and or put like zombies and whatever you want can suddenly come out of G0.
Aliens.
Yeah, I think
it's also nice that that it's like a sort of symbolic thing, that it's in the middle of the city. It's like the heart of the city is, rotten and infected, corrupted. So
yeah, and I like, so it's vague. I like that you allow whoever's going to be the GM. So like little lines like, whatever's making that sound behind the wall, right? Like that's great, because that could be the sound of a machine, an alien, a monster, right? Like it could be, anything. And so that's kind of cool, because sometimes, at least for me in horror movies and stuff like that, it's always up to the point before you've seen the monster that it's more terrible. When once you see the special effect, like, oh, it's the 3-headed monster, right? This idea of this thing or this, whatever it is actually kind of more powerful, right? So that was very cool.
And it's like people living right next to it, just outside the wall, as if nothing's happening, because, the novelty is worn off probably, and...
There are nightclubs inside the wall.
In the wall.
Inside the wall, you have nightclubs and things like that going on, because the wall is commonplace now. It's everywhere, and I mean, it's. I think it's a good thing to have there for you to explore and use however you want.
It's like a playground, very very close by. So
exactly.
Wherever you are, you're very close to this theme park of absolute horror, if you want to go.
Clearly, the people going to those nightclubs have never watched the old Battlestar Galactica, right? I don't know if you know,
what's the worst that can happen?
Yeah. Because party goers in, dinner comes out the back. It's okay. Yeah. It's all right.
Yeah.
But you could see that, right? People flocking to it. All the people who come and race down to the beach to film the, a hurricane or something, right?
Yeah.
Or jump in a car and race to go catch a tornado, right? If you're like, people would be drawn to the very thrill of being close to that, right? So that's very interesting.
They probably have like tours going into the G0 that you can pay a lot of money for, and you're not guaranteed safety or whatever, But yeah, it's a very dangerous world, this, definitely. We have something called kill matches. We don't really go into detail what those are, except they are a big, like, sports event. They're probably, like, some sort of gladiatorial combat going on, or, like, Running Man, or, But it's, people seek thrills in this world, and they have become, like, blasé with a lot of things that we find exciting now, I guess.
Yeah, jaded. I could see it being used as kind of a rite of passage. To like you don't really have your stripes until you've gone in to G0.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of interesting ways a jam could use that, and just tease it for months without even going in there, and then make that kind of Yeah, sorry, I'm thinking out loud.
He's planning his cyborg game.
And at the same time, I think we mentioned that there are like in certain areas in like Lake Ton, there's people selling fish clearly fished inside the walls. So it's like some people go there pretty much every day and have found some kind of way that they can get out and in, and then they just fish there because the competition is less and they don't. People don't stay. The fish are big, and you don't see you never see your customers twice anyway. So who cares if they get sick or not?
Right.
Yeah. So it's like, even if it's this rite of passage and it's a big deal, some people are clearly living off going in there, but those are probably hardcore pros somehow, even though they are not like punks and runners in the same way. They may be just fishermen, I guess.
Yeah, just desperate people who have nowhere else to fish, pretty much. Because the corporations have these like fish farms and the giant boats just trawling up the place. But yeah, it's a grim world. And I think like when we're talking about fish and water, I think water is a big thing that separates this setting and city in a bit, in a way, I think, from other cyberpunk settings. Because like everywhere you watch, it's water, and like it's a bunch of islands basically, the city. So there's lots of like canals and rivers and lakes and everything. So it's something to keep in mind, I think, when you run it.
Yep.
Is there an underwater location also, or am I?
Yeah, there's a construction site at least mentioned.
Okay.
For what is it, like a entertainment plaza or something, like a shopping
giant shopping mall and entertainment plaza being built underneath the lake, called Under sjön, which means under the lake, but also kind of very beautiful,
like Wonder Lake,
or wonderful, and so that's being built and already being. I think there's possibilities to be invited to some kind of party there, for example. And there's other. I mean, there's underwater like research labs and so on mentioned as well.
You can buy like a small submarine in the equipment list.
Exactly. Oh yeah,
stuff like that. Yeah.
So characters. Christian, out of those archetypes that you have in there, which one is your personal favorite?
Oh, that's picking between your own babies. You know,
that's why I asked.
I mean, I think sometimes we forget to talk about when we do interviews or pitch the games or so. We forget to mention the Nanomancer. And of course, this is what also is different from other cyberpunk games, that we do have the shunned Nanomancer, who is kind of like a mutated. First, well, it's a magician pretty much, but they get their powers from some weird thing, and it's more mutations because they come with really weird things, and it will make you look incredibly non-human if you play a Nanomancer, because you will probably end up with 2 or more nanopowers, and they come with infestations that always change how you look in some way, so you become quite freakish pretty soon. And of course that's I like that one very much, even if it wasn't I had to be a bit convinced to put weird stuff like weird tech / magic into the game. But once I figured out that this was what it's supposed to be, I liked the idea and really like it. But I mean, the renegade cyber slasher, the cybered up melee freak that may start each day with tending to their favorite plants and as some kind of ritual, or doing some kind of chaos magic ritual, or just meditate is cool. And also they can start with a flail, so you know, who who wouldn't pick that class as their favorite? But yeah, I mean, I like them all. It's 6 classes that we could have done more, to be honest, because we didn't feel like we were running out of ideas, or I didn't feel like I was running out of ideas. So I'm looking forward to maybe in the future design a few more classes myself sometime. But I think we got most of the important like concepts in there. We got the hacker, we got the magic user, I guess, and we got the melee guy, and we got
drone guy.
the drone guy or slash driver, and we got the so
I really like the Orphan Gearhead. The idea of walking around with a weapons platform is just,
yeah.
Yeah.
Johan, do you have a favorite?
No, I kind of like the Orphan Gearhead, actually, now that you mention it. And not only because you can begin with the giant walking weapons platform, but also because like the concept of them being like abandoned by their like mentor or friend, and now they don't trust humans anymore. They just trust machines because they are like cold code and steel and something you can rely on. And like all of our classes are kind of like abandoned in some way, or like shunned, or they're hated by society or someone else. But yeah, this one is very much like you're on your own now. Like you used to have someone, and now you only have your workshop and your tools and your drones.
Yeah.
As
gamers, we can all relate to this.
Exactly. Yeah.
Being shunned. And
you happen to hang around with a bunch of other punks in your party, but you don't really trust them because they're not machines.
Right. And you touched on it a bit, Christian. If you go into a little, kind of give some examples of what you wanted with the nano powers and the infestations after you were convinced.
I mean, I really wanted them to be something else than just what we expect from hackers or standard magic from normal fantasy games or something. I wanted them to be something more, something special, something weirder and unexplained. And there's a lot of like mutation stuff going on there. There's strange things from I mean, the inspiration from those comes from all over the place, and some of them are more obvious than other. There are some of them are pulled from comic books and things like that it's like pretty obvious if you think about it, and others are like pulled out of weird esoterica and ideas from all kind of magic traditions that we made more real, I guess, and more direct, third eyes and everything like that, which is also, of course, a classic. And then exists a bunch of in all sorts of media everywhere. But we wanted them to be weird and feel weird and kind of be scary and nasty. There's a reason why it's called the shunned nanomancer, and in the playtest campaign, the person who played that class had like 3 of them to start out with, and turned out to look, when we tried to imagine that character, we all felt like sick and ill, because it was just all sorts of things going on with their look, and everyone just hated that character because we couldn't like get past how this person must look. But he was there and refused to die. So yeah,
it's a lot of body horror going on.
Absolutely, yeah. There's a lot of body horror and a lot of weirdness and all the good stuff, I guess.
So in going with the idea that you could have any reason behind your ground zero, whether it could be, like you said, an asteroid, a gateway to hell, I was looking at, you also have almost like I hate to call them magic items, right? So, significantly advanced technology might appear to be magic, but there's like cursed items. And so again, I don't know if you could talk about the cursed items or not, but in my head, I thought, well, these could be technologically explained or not.
We call them the infested items, and infested means probably nano-related. And so I think that for the infested ones, they are probably something nano-infested in some way or another. But that, and of course, we don't explain exactly what the nano is, so you can make that into whatever you want. And we also mentioned like prototype technology that is more similar to the high advanced tech, but of course they both can be true at the same time. So I think we in the Stockholm Kartell and like MÖRK BORG, we do like powers that come with some kind of bad thing related to it, or risk,
cost,
or direct cost, or something like that. So once we had the concept of nano being an infection or an infestation, then having items also being able to be infested or so on made sense. And that made it possible for us to put whatever we want without having to even think about a possible scientific explanation. Because if we decide to put in lasers in there, which there are also laser guns and so on mentioned, or if we want to do rail guns or whatever, and keep on going more and more advanced, I think as soon as we start to think science, we want something to kind of back it up that this could be somehow possible. Even if we go okay, we can't figure out the energy source, it's not possible for us to figure out, but if we imagine that there is this really, really cool, completely new energy source, then we can do this thing. Okay, then we can do it. But otherwise I feel that maybe we need to tone it back down. But having this weird element and alien nanobacteria riding nanomachines or whatever we call it, it's makes it okay. We can do whatever we want. We don't have to limit ourselves here.
That's also one of the few really supernatural elements, I think, because we're referencing bacteria from outer space that are hijacking these nanorobots, and these nanorobots are now in your body, so probably multiplying and building more of themselves. So they can, since they are nano, they are so small, they can be pretty much everywhere, probably in every breath of air that you breathe in this city, more or less. So like you said, it allows us to make pretty much magic items and just say, instead of saying oh, a wizard did it, just say, oh, it's nano. So, it's very convenient and makes it very easy to just come up with stuff on the fly, I think.
Yeah. And I think you've built up such a community of creators, so I'm sure that I didn't really go too deep into what's out there already, but I'm sure there's some folks that are going to go crazy with the idea and just build on the whole, what since you've left it kind of vague and open, they can kind of decide what this nano infestation is and build a whole thing out of that. And you can have somebody else do it completely different. You have it be more magic or hell related, and both those things can coexist in this game. So I think that's pretty cool that you've left things up to us, the people playing the game, to make those decisions what suits us best, rather than having to go in and really hack it and I wish it was this, and I think if we change this rule here and this rule here, then we can kind of make it work. But if leaving it open, I think is gives us
And for most cyborg campaigns, what nano actually is won't matter at all. So leaving it open doesn't mean you have to come up with your own idea to it's not something that requires you to solve it before you start playing. You can just start playing, and if this is where your campaign is going, figuring out the source of nano and curing it or expanding upon it or whatever, do so. But otherwise you can just let it be. Just say we don't know, and that's good enough, because there's so many things in our world and so on that we don't know for sure, and we can go on with our lives, and great things can happen anyway. So I think that's important to like remember that you don't have to have an answer for everything that is going on.
Yeah.
Well, right. I mean, it would be like if you, which like a fantasy game, like, okay, before we go into the dungeon, my fighter would really like to understand how steel is forged. If you could explain this to me, my sword, like I don't feel like I can go in and slay the goblin until I understand what temperature. Right. It's a sword. I have, today it's like I have my cell phone. I understand the concept, but there could be little tiny critters running around inside that rectangle. I don't know. So yeah.
And I've been on role-playing game forums long enough to know that these people do exist, but maybe this game is not for them.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't have to please everybody.
Right.
No. And I think this is like the preferred way that we play it, and I know it's not for everyone, but I think it really helps with like letting you like come up with stuff. And yeah, as you said, Christian, you don't have to think about everything. You don't have to know everything.
Yeah, and I think us as a group, we tend to kind of balance back and forth. Sometimes we want the super crunch, like your GURPS and hero system, and sometimes we want something pretty light that we can just start rolling with, and you don't have to take 3 weeks to make a character. So
no, there's room for everything.
Yeah, it is nice. Again, reading through the rules, it's like, okay, I read through this one time. I could play this game. Within like half an hour, I could play. Now, I say that because I've read some of the other systems, right? So I am somewhat familiar with the mechanics, but so if you've been around playing, it's a very accessible system. I actually I don't know. So I don't know. There's like what it's originally based on, but this might be something if people might be interested in, is the idea of like the GM really not making a lot of rolls. That most of the roles are player roles. So in most games, or most traditional like D&D, the GM will roll a monster's attack, right? Or roll the actions. Whereas I believe if I read in this system, this is where the GM might state this person attacks you. It's the player who rolls to defend against a target number, right? And that's
and that's from MÖRK BORG originally. I'm not really sure where Pelle got that inspiration from, but
I mean, there are other completely player-facing rule systems as well, and I'm also not sure where Pelle got it from. But the reason why we kept it is, of course, because the philosophy with changing rules was if we really need to come up with a reason and explanation on why we should change this from MÖRK BORG, and I don't think we actually ended up changing anything. We clarified some things when it comes to glitches and compared to omens, but that's just like okay, we maybe we should clarify that you have to decide on if you want to use a glitch to lower the difficulty rating, you have to spend the glitch before you roll, because otherwise that was easy to just say okay, but if I spend a glitch now, I make the roll, and that's no fun, because one other thing you could use a glitch for or an omen for was to re-roll a roll, and why would you pick re-roll when you can see that if I lower it by 4, I can make the roll? But
yeah, but I think in terms of like player-facing systems like this, it really gives the players full control of what's happening to them, and also like if they are hit by an attack, like the GM didn't roll to attack, like they didn't roll high. The players had to fail their roll, so it's like their fault. Like it's on you if you fail, So I think it adds a lot of like tension and weight to every roll, because you as a player, like the fate is literally in your hand as you're going to die.
And that's why.
And every roll is open as well. Like you have no screen that you can hide behind, so you can't fudge any rolls. So if you die, you die. So that's at least in my experience playing these systems, like compared to others, I think it really adds a lot of like importance to every roll, which I like.
And you really should let your players roll the damage the damage they take as well, because that's the most painful part. Rolling to see, oh my god, I'm hit, and then you hear the GM say like, okay, and it's a D8 in damage, and you look at your 3 hit points and you go, oh shit, and that's much more painful but also enjoyable than just waiting for the GM, especially if it's behind the screen or anything, to say, oh, you're hit for 3 damage. It's like, oh, that was precisely what I needed to go off or die. But I think it also makes it, I mean, it's not a rules heavy game, but not having to bother with rolls. There are a couple of rolls that you roll as a GM, or probably rolls that there are like random encounters, and there's reaction tables, or the reaction table or so on. I prefer to do those rolls myself, because it also means that I get to roll some dice. But during combat, I can instead focus on what's going on and what's happening, and describing doors being blown to pieces and so on, while someone is rolling. And everyone else is more engaged and not having to wait for me to think and do maths in my head, or try to find where my dice is. We can just go on with the game as we are rolling. It's not a big difference depending on, since there's not that many rolls anyway, but whatever, every little bit helps, I think.
Are the difficulty classes set, or is it a negotiation? So you might be like, you have you have to roll a 12 or higher. Is there like, do people have like skills or items? I know there's like an ability that can lower, but are there things like, oh, I've got this piece of equipment, and is that a negotiation on the difficulty class, or is it kind of each certain tasks are just set?
I think that, go on.
I think it's a playstyle thing. Like, we don't really determine it in the book. There are, as you mentioned, there are some items and stuff, or like situational bonuses. But I think like when I run it, it's usually some kind of discussion. I will usually like do a ruling depending on the situation and what they're attempting. But if the player has another idea and think like, oh, I think this should be this, difficulty rating instead, then I'm not a stranger to like adapting and changing that so that everyone is part of it. But yeah, I like to keep that pretty open. I know not everyone does that, but they're meant to be like the normal difficulty is 12, and then you can go up and down, and there's a lot of factors that can change that. So I like to keep it as a discussion.
Yeah, I like the discussion aspect, because it kind of gets you away from the dice a little bit and makes them kind of think about, okay, what's my character doing right now, and why should I get this bonus or whatnot, and anything that gets the player to describe the scene and help describe the scene, I think that's a good addition to the game.
I also kind of I just kind of like it because they can think outside the box and not always have to look at what they have on the character sheet and use the environment or whatever. So
not just I swing my sword,
Yeah, exactly.
No, that DC 12. Have a good day, right? It's like
yeah. So I guess kind of the last round of questions, at least from my end. You've gotten a lot more digital tools for MÖRK BORG now. What are your plans for digital tools for Cyborg? Are there like monster generators, or
We're working on almost a monster generator in a way, but we're working on a character generator, the punk maker, and we're also working on a NPC generator, so creating very interesting NPCs with including what they're like kind of doing or what's going on right now and where they're from and all sorts of things. And also the job creator, the mission generator.
Okay.
And one reason why the book is twice as long as, or twice as big as MÖRK BORG, or twice as many pages as MÖRK BORG, is that there is a lot of random tables to create missions and to especially to create missions, but also like events and what's going on and character traits and wants and styles and so on. But the mission generator is, I think it's like, how long is it?
No,
9 spreads or something.
Yeah.
Where you come up with, you can roll who's offering the mission, who's the contact for like who contacts you, what a job is, what the target is, where the target is located, how's the security, and of course what's the reward and what's the complication that comes up, like what goes wrong or what can happen like to this mission. And having that on just a mouse click away is gonna be really nice.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Infinite adventures, basically.
Yeah.
And will there be a bare bones edition?
We haven't really discussed that yet. Right now, we're focusing on getting the game out in stores first.
Giving me my fucking book.
Yeah, there are and Johan has been busy with the other stuff, and I have also been busy with other gaming and other stuff. So we haven't really. We have had some ideas on what's next for Cyborg, absolutely, and there's more coming for sure. But we haven't really
had the time to sit down properly and
plan
it. No, so
No.
there's been work-ins on each separate side of us, I think. But yeah, things are coming.
Okay. And you guys went to Gen Con, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
How was that? How'd you like Indy?
I mean, Indy as a city,
It's a place on Earth.
it's a place. I mean, the con was a different
Fair,
thing. That
yeah,
was
fair.
that was really fun, and we'll definitely return some year. And I think it was a lot of fun just meeting people. And we didn't have our own like booth, but we were together with Free League, and we had like a shrinking corner in their booth where we could sell our stuff and have like a home base.
And it
was
shrunk.
nice.
It shrunk because we kept selling out of our stuff, so we didn't have anything
Good problem.
more to put there. And
Not because they sort of pushed us out. Yeah, we actually didn't need much more space.
Well, I know that Doug is a pushy guy, so
Yeah, very much. No.
yeah. So you should come to PAX Unplugged. That's a lot easier for Matt and I to get to. So
where
where
is
is Philadelphia?
Yeah, Philadelphia. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot smaller. It's not quite the crush of humanity that Gen Con is.
How big is a lot smaller? Do you know?
What do you think? How many people do you think were there? Like 5,000?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's
That is a lot smaller.
But yeah, it's a lot smaller. But it's nice because you could actually go up and talk to people, and they could give you a few minutes of their time, and that was it was a lot of fun last year. I've been a couple times, but it's a pretty good show.
I think we'll definitely go to more cons now that we have a couple of different books and games to offer. So we have MÖRK BORG and this and Death in Space as well, and so there's a lot more in like our repertoire that we can that we can show and offer. So that's fun.
That's good.
Awesome.
Last question from me. And Matt, do you have anything you want to?
I don't really have any last question. No, I think I've covered everything. I know
So,
I have lots of questions about game mechanics, but I'm good.
So Christian, what were you listening to when you're writing this game? What was your soundtrack?
I mean, we posted a playlist on the Kickstarter page, but there was a lot of for me now old industrial and noise. I think that Alec Empire versus Marisbau live at the CBGB is an incredible album all the way through. Author and Punisher, The Body, the Einstürzen, the Neubaut, and Boris, and also like Drone and Sun and Tarmvred, and all sorts of fun people. But also, I mean, there's laser metal or whatever they call it, a Finnish band called Night Satan, which makes almost like synthwave, some kind of retro synth thing that is nice to listen to, and yeah, a lot of that sort of thing, industrial and noise and EBM sort of things, but not exclusively, but a lot of that.
Yeah. I listened to a lot of Nitzareb and in Ministry and a little bit of I can say the German band, Einstürzen.
Einstürzen Neubauten, yes.
Okay, thank you, Neubauten, yeah. Collapsing new buildings, I know that. But great band. Just really cool recordings too. But anyway, Johan, what about you? Or you?
Pretty similar. I think I also when I was illustrating, there was a lot of like crust punk rock, a lot of like hardcore, bunch of hip hop as well, and like those kind of genres that I felt was important to catch the sort of grungy, like the scrappy vibe of it, or like the dirty vibe of the whole thing here.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of like very angry bands. Tried to avoid metal as much as I could because I didn't want it to like sort of feel too much like Mörk Borg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the playlist that we did encapsulates pretty well what we think this game sounds like.
I'll be sure to link that. I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, check that out. And especially like the opening track, it's a very good like introduction to it.
Yeah, and you also have like on at the credits page you have a list of artists that inspired it. So I think that's actually longer than the playlist is. When it comes to that sort of thing, because we couldn't put, when we made the playlist or put together the playlist, we couldn't do everything, but it's a rough listen, that playlist, because it goes from really harsh noise into smooth synthwave, and then a really rough hip hop track, and so on. So you're
it's all over the place.
It's really all over the place, and that's how we feel like the cyborg world is. Everything. It's not a doom metal game. It's this great juxtaposition thing. Everything is mashed together kind of game, and all of these styles exist at the same time in this world, because all of these styles exist now. Today, it's not just pop right now. It's everything at once. Subcultures don't just die off; that they keep existing, and somewhere someone is listening to something that you thought was dead 20 years ago, but somewhere someone is running a club based on those like artists and so on.
So sampling's not going away, even in the dark dystopian future.
No, absolutely not.
And there's still like retro vinyl shops inside, definitely.
Yeah, I think we have
nothing ever goes away.
Yeah, I think we have vinyl records mentioned in there
Yes.
somewhere. For
That's
example.
funny.
I think it can be an obsession or
It's also in one of the arts, like one of the ads for like vinyl store because
Awesome.
Yeah.
I felt that when I flipping through it and then getting to the page for the hills. That was like such a quite a departure from the earlier pages of the book. It's like, oh, okay, it's all bright and blue.
Well, someone's doing well, right? They might be on the backs of everybody
Yeah, exactly.
else, but they're doing great, right?
Yeah.
And especially, I think that image, if you also have like your MÖRK BORG copy next to it, and you flip to the page about Anthelia and Caragos, there's a yellow page with like a lady ripping the head off a knight. They're kind of similar. It's like a callback to that. It's like a homage to her. So like she represents the nobility or the ultra rich here, and so like there's a few of those like visual references to MÖRK BORG. But
That's very
I
cool.
like these
yeah,
Easter
definitely.
eggs.
I
That's
kind
great.
of like. Yeah, it's a lot, but I kind of like that image because like there's the serenity of like this lady like petting her cat creature, like DNA spliced weird cat, but at the same time you have this like gate with like machine gun turrets on top of next to her. So
I mean, it's a
like-
really beautiful fence gate. It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
like it's not a prison gate
gorgeous.
or anything.
Gorgeous.
But absolutely,
no, it's like gorgeous and very like elegant, but you're not welcome here.
Stay out.
Yeah.
Well, Johan, thanks for coming back. Christian, it's a pleasure meeting and talking to you. Like we've felt like we've kind of dipped into your brain a little bit, which is it's not a bad place.
Have you read the game?
Well, yeah, if you knew us in context of me being who I am and Matt, it's not bad. So
No.
Right. It's very nice to be here again.
Yep.
But yeah, thanks again for coming and staying up late with us, and look forward to getting you guys back on here next time something cool comes out.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Thanks, and good night, everyone.
Yeah, thank you very much for spending some time with us. Appreciate it.